Hi Rowan, we are back. I hope you had a lot of fun starting your drawing for our Paul Klee inspired city. You are going to need that drawing today. Yours should not look like my finished one. It should look like the one that we left off with last week, where everything is white and we've just started coloring in our blocks and shapes. The other supplies that you will need today to be included are a box of crayons. I have my 64 crayons. You are going to need a paintbrush, paper towel, and your paints. Obviously, this is my paint palette where I'm going to put my paints. You should have your container of blue paints for the background sky. So let's get started. As you can see, I have our drawing out with my crayons again. And I need, just like you, to finish working on filling in all of our fun shapes with different and bright colors. I want to show you again the student examples of this project, and you can see there are just tons of bright colors and lots of different size shapes, and then the sky on these student examples is all blue. So we're going to be adding that blue today after we're finished coloring our buildings with the crayon. So you're going to want to pull out whatever crayons you were using and continue to be filling in your shapes until you have finished doing and working on your buildings. Just a reminder that as you do this, you want to do multiple shapes of one color at a time so that our drawing will look like it belongs together, and and that the colors will match throughout the buildings, and that will make it look more uniform, even with all of our fun bright colors. So I've got this really nice kind of blue greenish light blue here. Also want to remind you that we aren't doing it really light and scribbly like that. We are filling it in solidly. It means you're putting a little bit of pressure on your crayons. And so this is why I didn't have you finish the drawing last week, because it just would take up too much time, both the drawing of our shapes and the coloring in all the way. That is a time commitment. So turn on some good music. You can follow me if you would like. I'm putting these blues up here and I'm thinking I don't want to do too many because our sky is going to be blue. So maybe I'm going to move down. I'm going to move these to some other shapes. But anyways, turn on some music that you like or a story you like to listen to, and I'm going to kind of speed up my drawing for you so it doesn't take all day. And go ahead and finish coloring solidly into your shapes until they're completely filled in with the bright colors that are similar to the Paul Klee paintings that we looked at. Remember, as you're filling in your spaces, that if you make all of your lines mostly go the same direction when you fill it in, it will look a little bit neater, but it also will give you better coverage. So I'm coloring this one in vertically because that makes sense for that shape. But this one was so long this way that I did it horizontally. And up here, I will also do this one horizontally because that is, it is long that way. This was such a big space here, and so my lines went, I did them both horizontally and vertically. You're going to want to make certain that when you're filling in your spaces, if you have to go back over it and overlap it to make it solid enough, that is a fine thing to do. So you should go ahead and go over it as many times as you need to fill it in well. All right, Rowan, you can see that I have my Paul Klee inspired drawing all filled in solidly with different crayon colors. I am tapping it. You can see all of the wax that has come off from the crayons. So I'm just going to kind of wipe that off to the side. You can see that I have a couple of spots in my curved line areas, which look kind of like entrances to doors, that are not filled in. Those are still that cream color that's from the paper. We're going to be using those open spaces. We'll be filling those with paint. Before we get our paint ready, we want to include our sun. So you're going to go ahead, and this seems to be the best spot for me to put a sun or moon because I had a lot of open area. So I used my marker and I just put in a circle without doing it with a pencil. If you want to do it with a pencil first and then trace it like we did the rest of our buildings, you can go ahead and do that. I'm using a regular yellow and I'm going to just be filling in my circle with that yellow. I want this to be nice and solid. The reason why we used the wax crayons is because the paint that we will paint in the background will not stick to the wax crayons. So even if we get some paint on it, we'll be able to wipe it off, and it's not going to stick to it because the wax itself resists the water-based paint. So again, I'm going to tap that, get that extra out of the way. For our time of painting, you are going to want to move your supplies to the side and get something to protect your table. I have a little bit of brown paper that I will use for that. You want to get the paints that I sent home with you. You can see that my palette actually has some blue in it. The paints that we use are water soluble, which means that when you get them wet, they like to move again. So I'm primarily using the lighter blue, but I'm also going to put just a little bit of that darker blue that I sent home to you in here as well. You're going to want to have with you, you want to grab your paintbrush, you're going to want to grab your water, you want your paper towel on the side for your wet brush. I want to give you a little bit of, I want to remind you as you're working on this that once the painting is close to you, you paint those areas, then we can turn the painting around so that you'll be able to reach it better. But you want a brush that has, so this is a round brush, so you can see all the bristles are close together, but it's pretty big. It's going to be able to hold a lot of paint. I'm going to get my round brush wet, and I'm just going to work on these openings that I have here. Now your blue paint is better than mine. You can see my paint here, you really can see through it. It's what we call translucent. You could see light through it. Yeah, we can see the paper through it. It's not very solid. I added another layer so it'll be a little bit thicker, but it's not very solid, which is kind of annoying. So your paints will be nicer. So I'm going to fill in these little archways with paint. You can put your paint, I hope you know, just like on a paper plate. You don't have to have a palette. Now I'm going to go and work up the sides. This is a little bit like when we did the scarecrows and you did those plaid shirts. This paint is, like I said, it's not going to cover, it can't cover where the crayons are because the crayons resist it. So you just want to be really careful as you put this paint on to try and stay away from overlapping on your crayons. But if you do get it on your crayons, we'll be able to wipe it off, and that's not a big deal. I'm going to turn my painting around so that it's easier for me to reach the sky. I recommend that you go into the areas of the buildings first, kind of around the edges of it. Some of these are really small, so I have to be real careful. I'm going to pull up a little bit of my darker blue paint because I think I might like that. You can always add a little bit of water to your brush to help your paint spread better. Once I have that area kind of covered, then I can use, I'm dipping into the lighter paint, the lighter blue paint. And if you'll remember, Paul Klee's painting had kind of that burgundy, which is like a dark red, almost like a purple background. We want ours to be a little more cheerful. And so again, I'm going to go in here. Oops, I'm getting it on my sweater. So you might want to pull up your sleeves. And I'm carefully getting into the edges here. So you can see I use some of the dark blue and some of the light blue, and I blended them together. If you don't like how that looks, you can choose to just use one of the blues. But I do like having some of that dark and light together. I'm enjoying that. You can see it's good. It's good that I put paper down underneath my painting so it has a chance. So I can have fun painting it, but I'm not worried about the table. Okay, so I was cleaning my brush. I'm gonna move my paint and flip over my painting so you can see what it looks like. I'm just gonna pick up the last bit of my blue paint, and I am going to, because my paint is already drying in the sky, I'm just adding a little bit more to the top because that paint is fairly transparent. You can see that even better here. If you want your blues to blend just a little bit better, you can always add a little bit of water to your brushes. There we have it. We have our nice blue background for the sky with our wonderful Paul Klee inspired buildings. And the last part that we need to do is just wait for it to dry. Rowan, once your painting is dry, and you can see that my painting is mostly dry. I have a couple spots that are wet, but the majority of my painting is dry, and I am going to be putting my name on. I tried to do it with the crayon, but that just didn't work. So in the corner and somewhere in on your painting, probably where there is dry paint, you can go ahead and sign your work. So I've got Mrs. J there. I hope you put Rowan on yours, and I look forward to seeing your painting. Post it on Seesaw, and if you have any questions, you can always send me a message that way. But I look forward to seeing your finished project, and I hope you had a lot of fun with lots of bright colors and learning a little bit about the artist Paul Klee. Have a great week.